AITA for refusing to be the maid of honor at my sister's wedding after I found out she built the entire event around a joke at my expense. My sister, Claire, has always been the golden child in our family. She's charming, social, effortlessly fashionable, and people gravitate toward her. I'm more the quiet, organized one, good with logistics, bad with crowds. Growing up, this dynamic worked because we stayed out of each other's lanes. But when Claire got engaged last year, our lanes collided in the most chaotic way possible. She asked me to be her maid of honor, and I genuinely felt touched. We'd gotten closer as adults, and I assumed she trusted me to help her plan the most important day of her life. I said yes without hesitation. Almost immediately, I was put on group chats, spreadsheets, Pinterest boards, budget breakdowns, the whole bridal circus. I didn't mind. I'm good at this kind of thing, and I thought it might actually bring us closer. The first sign something was off came during the engagement party. Her fiancé's friends kept referring to me as the legend. I thought maybe Claire had told them I was handling all the logistics, and they were teasing me about being the responsible one. But one guy winked and said, "Wait till the wedding." When I asked Claire about it, she brushed it off with a laugh and said they were just hyping me up because I was basically the wedding architect. I let slide. Over the next several months, I handled everything. The venue tour schedule, the deposit tracking, the vendor negotiations, the color palette disputes. Claire's requests got increasingly bizarre, though. She insisted that the bridesmaids wear gowns and shades that matched my natural hair color. I have dark copper hair, so we ended up with 3 bridesmaids in various tones of burnt orange and rust. Then she said I should wear a champagne dress because she wanted me to look cohesive with the whole theme. When I asked what the theme actually was, she said harmony. Cryptic but fine. Brides get poetic. Fast forward to the bridal shower. One of Claire's college friends jokingly said, "I still can't believe you're actually doing this." And everyone laughed except me. When I pushed for an explanation, they all suddenly found the charcuterie table very interesting. Again, Claire brushed it off and told me to stop being so serious. The real blow came during the final venue walkthrough about a month before the wedding. The coordinator pulled out the printed ceremony script so Claire could approve it. I wasn't paying close attention until I heard my own name. I looked down at the script and saw that Claire had inserted an entire monologue the officiant was supposed to read right before I handed her the bouquet. It went on about how, when we were kids, I desperately wanted to be a princess and used to wear a plastic tiara everywhere. That part was true, but harmless. Then it got worse. The script said that Claire had chosen the wedding colors, decor, and processional order to create what she called the princess and her loyal steward motif. The steward being me. The coordinator highlighted a line that literally said, "This ceremony celebrates the bond between sisters, where one leads with grace and the other supports with dedication." I felt my stomach flip. It made me sound like her personal attendant, not her maid of honor. I asked why she wrote that, and Claire laughed like I was being dramatic. She said it was supposed to be a sweet nod to our childhood and that everyone would think it was adorable. I told her there was no universe where I would stand in front of 150 people and be publicly labeled her steward. She rolled her eyes and said, "Oh my God, it's not that deep. It's just a vibe. Everyone already knows you're the responsible one." I told her I was uncomfortable with the entire framing and that she needed to cut that part of the script and adjust the theme so it didn't revolve around making me look like her servant. She responded that everything was already designed around that dynamic, including the bridesmaid dresses, the ceremony setup, and even the reception entrance order. She said changing it would be undoing months of work. I said I never agreed to any of that. She said it was implied. That night, I went home and reread the script. I realized every strange detail suddenly made sense. The copper dresses, the champagne gown for me, the weird inside jokes, the legend comments. Everyone knew this was a long-running bit, except me. I felt humiliated. I texted Claire the next morning and told her I was stepping down as maid of honor. I said I'd still attend the wedding, but I wasn't participating in a ceremony that turned me into a punchline. She blew up. She said I was selfish, sabotaging her big day, overreacting over a cute childhood reference, and that now she had to reassign roles and redo photos. My parents got involved. My mom said she understood why I felt embarrassed, but that I should let Claire have her fun. because weddings are stressful. My dad said it was just symbolic. Several bridesmaids messaged me saying they thought the whole steward theme was harmless, and that Claire wasn't mocking me. She was honoring our dynamic. I told them if this was honoring, I'd hate to see insulting. Claire is now furious, telling relatives I bailed on her out of jealousy. My aunt called asking if I was upset that Claire was getting married first. A cousin texted me saying I'd ruined the family atmosphere over nothing. But I can't shake the feeling that this was never meant to honor anything. It felt like Claire spent a year orchestrating an event where I would literally stand beside her in coordinated colors to visually reinforce a dynamic where she's the princess and I'm the supporting cast. And the fact that she didn't tell me what she was doing makes it feel intentional, like the surprise was part of the joke. I don't know if I overreacted by stepping down or if anyone else would have done the same. AITA for refusing to play the role, she wrote for me. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It helps the content grow and motivates me to create even more great videos. Turn on notifications so you don't miss any new uploads. By the way, I'm curious, when do you usually watch my videos? While working, studying, or just relaxing at home? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you for your support. AITA for refusing to let my brother and his fiancée use my house for their dream wedding after they treated me like free labor for months. I'm a 34-year-old woman, and I bought my house 3 years ago after saving for almost a decade. It's my pride and joy because it needed a lot of work, and I spent nearly every weekend slowly renovating it myself. It's a small farmhouse on a couple acres, nothing extravagant, but it's quiet and private, and it finally feels like home. My younger brother, Mark, is 29. He got engaged last year to his fiancée, Clara. She comes from a very image-focused family, and while she isn't unpleasant, she has this air of expecting everyone to go along with whatever she envisions. When they got engaged, she started posting all over social media about wanting a rustic outdoor wedding, complete with a barn and fields and sunset photos. Their budget was pretty tight, though, and renting a venue like that in our area is extremely expensive. Last fall, they came over for dinner, and completely out of nowhere, Clara said something like, "This place is perfect for our wedding." I laughed because I thought she was joking. She wasn't. She started talking about where the ceremony could be set up, where the guests would sit, where the caterers could work. She talked as if she already had it booked. I hadn't agreed to anything and felt blindsided. Mark chimed in and said it would mean a lot to them and that hosting it here would save them a ton of money. I didn't want to be the bad guy, so I said I'd think about it. Over the next few weeks, Clara kept sending me Pinterest boards and ideas for how we could spruce up the yard. Not she and Mark. We. She wanted new lighting strung across the trees, a path cleared in the woods, a removable archway, and my barn cleared of storage so she could use it as a backdrop for photos. I told her that if they wanted to have it here, they needed to understand that I wasn't planning on spending thousands of dollars or every weekend doing manual labor to turn my home into a wedding venue. They said they'd help, but help turned out to be showing up occasionally, staying for maybe an hour, and then leaving because of other plans. Over the winter, Clara began messaging me with things like, "Could you trim the hedges this weekend? Or could you clear more of the path before spring?" Every time I reminded them that these were projects they needed to take on, they'd say they'd get to it and then wouldn't. By early spring, I realized I had cleared the entire path myself, repainted a bunch of outdoor furniture, fixed up the barn's front paneling, and bought new gravel for the driveway. Mark and Clara hadn't done much of anything. I was exhausted and irritated. When I confronted Mark, he said something like, "You're better at this stuff, and you care about the house's appearance more than we do. That's why it makes sense you're doing it." Clara added that I should think of it as contributing to their special day, since they'd never be able to afford a place as nice as mine. The final straw was when Clara texted me asking if I could have the barn interior repainted before July, because it would look better for photos. That would cost a few $100s minimum and take several days of work. I told her absolutely not. She responded with a long paragraph, saying she was disappointed I wasn't more excited to be part of their wedding and that she thought family was supposed to support each other. She added that the wedding was already being planned around my property, so it would be difficult for them to find another place. That annoyed me so much I took a day to calm down, then invited them over to lay everything out. I told them plainly, I no longer wanted to host the wedding. I felt taken advantage of, unappreciated, and pressured. I said I had done far more work than I ever agreed to, and that their entitlement had made me uncomfortable in my own home. Clara burst into tears immediately, saying she knew I never liked her, and this was proof. Mark looked shocked, but instead of apologizing, he asked if I was really willing to ruin their wedding over a few chores. I said they weren't chores. They were major projects they kept pushing on me without contributing. I said I wished them the best, but the answer was final. They both left angry. Over the next week, my parents called to say Mark and Clara were panicking because most venues were already booked for the summer. My mom begged me to reconsider. My dad told me I should have been clearer from the start and that now the whole family was dealing with the fallout. Extended family members have weighed in, saying things like it's just one day and you're being dramatic. The part that makes me question myself is that Mark and I used to be close, and I know money is tight for them. I do feel a little guilty that canceling means they'll have to change their plans, postpone, or spend more than they can afford. But at the same time, I can't shake how blatantly they used me. The messages, the assumptions, the lack of actual effort. It's my home, not a venue. And I shouldn't feel dread every time my phone buzzes with another request for labor. Mark still won't talk to me. Clara has blocked me on everything. My parents are civil, but frustrated. A few friends say I should have stood my ground sooner, while others say I should suck it up because family is important and it's a once-in-a-lifetime event. Now I'm just sitting here second-guessing everything. Was I too harsh? Did I let things go too far before pulling the plug? Should I have compromised more? Or was I right to protect my home and my time? AITA for refusing to let them use my house for their wedding after all the work I ended up doing? AITA for refusing to let my sister's family move into my house after she promised it would be just for a few weeks, but actually planned to stay indefinitely? I'm a 34-year-old guy who bought a house 3 years ago after years of grinding at a job I don't always love, but that pays well. I'm single, no kids, but I do have a dog and a pretty structured life that keeps me sane. My older sister, 38, has always been the chaotic one. She's not irresponsible in a malicious way, just a person who always thinks things will work out somehow and then acts surprised when reality disagrees. She's married, has 2 kids, and she and her husband have always bounced between jobs and rentals. I've helped them more than once, but I've tried to keep boundaries. About 2 months ago, she called me in tears saying their landlord was selling the property and they had to move out in 30 days. She said they couldn't find anything in their price range and asked if they could stay with me just for a few weeks while they saved up and searched. I hesitated, but said I'd think about it. My house isn't huge, and having 4 extra people would basically turn my life upside down. But she cried again and said they had nowhere else to go. I told her I needed to talk to her husband and set some clear rules. Her husband got on the phone and told me he was about to start a new job, their savings were low, and they just needed a temporary landing pad. I said that if they stayed with me, it would be for a maximum of 6 weeks. They'd have to contribute to utilities, and they'd need to show me what apartments they were applying for. They both agreed immediately, almost too quickly. Before they moved in, I decided to clean out the guest room and create space in the living room for the kids' stuff. When I opened the guest room closet, I noticed boxes stacked inside that weren't mine. At first, I thought maybe I forgot about them, but when I opened one, it was filled with my sister's family photos and kids' toys. Another was full of kitchen utensils I didn't recognize. Then I found 3 boxes labeled moving, non-essential, in my sister's handwriting. I called her and asked what these were. She laughed awkwardly and said, "Oh yeah, we dropped some stuff off last week when you were at work, just to get a head start." I asked why she didn't tell me, and she said she didn't want to stress me out. That already annoyed me, but I said fine. The next morning, I woke to my sister's minivan in my driveway and her entire family moving even more boxes into my garage. I told them they weren't supposed to move anything else until we finalized the plan. My sister smiled like I was being dramatic and said, "We're just trying to make it easier for when we officially stay." At this point, I insisted we sit down and talk. I asked them again about the 6-week maximum. My sister said, "Obviously, we want to be out as soon as possible, but realistically, it might take a little longer." I asked how much longer. She said, "Maybe 3 months? Maybe 4? We'll know when we settle in. Her husband nodded like this was perfectly reasonable. I reminded them that the agreement was 6 weeks. My sister suddenly shifted into guilt mode, saying they couldn't possibly find something that fast. Her kids needed stability, and if I kicked them out after 6 weeks, they'd basically be homeless. I said they weren't even living here yet and already violating boundaries, and I needed them to respect the agreement. She said life doesn't work like that, and I needed to show compassion. I told them to stop bringing their belongings, and we needed to pause everything until we clarified expectations. They got defensive. Her husband said, "We thought we were family, but you're treating us like strangers applying for a rental." I said my home isn't a shelter, and I need to protect my own stability. They left in a huff, but I didn't hear from them for 2 days. Then I got a long text from my sister saying that they had already given notice to their landlord. They were out of money, and they were counting on me. She wrote that she assumed I'd understand that 6 weeks was unrealistic and that she didn't want to scare me off by telling me they expected to stay longer. That admission hit me like a truck. They lied because they knew I wouldn't agree otherwise. I texted back saying I was sorry for their situation, but I couldn't host them. Not for 6 weeks, not for 6 months, not under circumstances where they were already manipulating me. She blew up, saying I was choosing my empty house over her children's well-being. She said that if my parents were still alive, they'd be ashamed of me for abandoning family in need. Then extended family got involved. My aunt called saying I needed to step up because I had the space and the means. I reminded her she has a 4-bedroom house and 2 spare rooms. She went silent and then said she couldn't disrupt her routine. My sister posted a vague status online about being betrayed by someone she trusted. People assumed it was about her husband at first, but when I didn't respond to it publicly, she posted again, basically implying I care more about my dog than her kids. Now half the family thinks I'm heartless, and the other half quietly agrees with me, but won't say anything because they don't want to be her next target. Meanwhile, I still have their boxes in my guest room and garage because they refuse to pick them up. She told me she's not going to waste gas to retrieve them because she's too stressed. I'm starting to question myself. I know kids are involved, and I don't want them to suffer, but I also don't want to turn my home into an indefinite crisis center. I can afford to help them financially in small ways, but I can't sacrifice my entire life because my sister refuses to plan ahead. So here I am, wondering if I really am the bad guy for refusing to let my sister's family move in after she guilted me, manipulated the timeline, and basically tried to sneak into an indefinite arrangement that would have drained me emotionally and financially. AITA? AITA for refusing to let my sister's fiancé apologize to me unless he did it in front of the whole family after he publicly humiliated me? I'm a 27-year-old woman, and for context, my family has always been the type that loves to roast each other. The problem is that the roasting tends to flow one way, toward me. I'm the quiet one, the one who doesn't cause trouble, the one who everyone assumes won't fight back. Over the years, I've learned to brush it off, but recently something happened that made me question whether I've been enabling this dynamic. My sister, 29, is getting married soon, and her fiancé Mark is someone the family immediately adored. Mark is charismatic, loud, and very quick-witted. People think he's hilarious. I used to like him, but lately I've noticed he loves to get a laugh at someone's expense, and that someone tends to be me. A few weeks ago, my parents hosted a big dinner with extended relatives who were in town for a funeral. It was a heavy week for everyone. At dinner, people were trying to lighten the mood, and Mark started joking around. At first, it was harmless stuff, but then he drifted into making jokes about my career. I work in policy research, which isn't glamorous, but I love it, and I'm proud of what I do. Mark started saying things like, well, if we ever need someone to write a 500-page report no one reads, we all know who to call. People chuckled. I forced a smile. My aunt said something about how at least I had job stability, and Mark shot back, yeah, but at what cost? She's the only person I know who can make a room fall asleep without even talking. People actually laughed hard at that. I felt my face burning. I tried to change the subject, but he kept going. My sister was giggling and saying, stop, stop, in that way where she clearly wanted him to continue. My parents didn't intervene, which is normal for them. Then came the worst part. My cousin mentioned that I had recently bought my first condo. Mark loudly said, "I'm honestly shocked they approved her mortgage. I mean, I guess if you don't have a social life draining your money, you can save a ton." Everyone laughed again. I snapped. I actually pushed my chair back, stood up, and said I wasn't feeling well. I left the table and went upstairs to the guest room, where I cried into a pillow because I hadn't cried like that in years. I just felt so small, so stupid, so tired of being the quiet one who everyone treats like background noise. My sister came up about 15 minutes later. She knocked, came in, and immediately said, "You need to come back down. Mark feels bad." I asked if he sent her up to talk to me, and she said no, she just thought I was overreacting and making things awkward. That word, overreacting, cut deep. I told her I wasn't coming back down, and she rolled her eyes and left. The next morning, my parents said I had ruined the evening, and that Mark had been trying to lighten the mood after a sad week. They acted like I owed him an apology for leaving the table. I went home and didn't speak to my sister for days. Then she called me saying Mark wanted to apologize. She said, "He didn't mean to hurt you, he just makes jokes. He's agreed to say sorry, so can you just let it go?" Here's where I might be the asshole. I told her I would accept the apology, but only if he delivered it in front of the same group who heard him humiliate me. My reasoning was that he embarrassed me publicly, so he should apologize publicly. I didn't raise my voice, I didn't insult her, I just said that was my condition. She blew up, saying I was being dramatic, that apologies are private, that I was trying to embarrass him in return. She said Mark was willing to say sorry, but wouldn't do it in front of everyone because that would make him look bad. I pointed out that he didn't seem to care about making me look bad. My parents jumped in again, telling me I was making this so much bigger than it is, and that people wouldn't even remember the jokes if I didn't insist on dragging it back up. I told them people remember. They always remember when I'm the punchline. My family insists I'm holding the apology hostage and that I'm trying to punish Mark. I honestly don't think I am. I just want the same respect in return for what I lost in that moment. If you publicly demean someone, the apology shouldn't be whispered behind closed doors. It should match the scale of the harm. Things escalated to the point that my sister said if I didn't drop this, she didn't want me involved in her wedding party anymore. I told her that if defending myself disqualifies me from being her bridesmaid, then so be it. She hung up. Now my aunt and cousins are texting me, saying I should just accept the private apology and move on because holding grudges will just isolate me further. My best friend says she gets why I want the apology publicly, but thinks it's a losing battle because my family never sides with me. I keep replaying the dinner in my head. I keep hearing the laughter. And I keep thinking that if I let this go, it'll just be another example of me letting people decide I'm a safe target because I won't push back. I don't think I'm wrong for wanting the apology publicly, but maybe the stubbornness of insisting on it is what makes me the problem. Maybe the healthier thing would be to just accept the private apology, even if it feels hollow. Maybe I'm turning one night into something huge because it was the first time in a long time that I allowed myself to feel hurt instead of shrugging it off. But something in me says enough is enough. If I don't stand up for myself now, I'll never do it. So I don't know. Am I the asshole for refusing a private apology and insisting it be public? AITA for refusing to let my husband come back home after he tried to teach me a lesson by secretly moving out? I never thought I would end up writing something like this, but my sister insisted I needed outside opinions because everyone around me is too emotionally involved. My husband, Mark, and I have been together for 9 years, married for 6. We've had the normal ups and downs, but nothing dramatic until this year. The core issue is that Mark feels like he isn't appreciated. I'm a project manager for a medical tech company, and my schedule gets hectic. He works in IT from home. He has more flexibility than I do, but he also carries a lot of personal insecurity because my income is higher. For months, he's been saying things like, "You don't notice the little things I do," or, "I feel like I'm invisible to you." I won't pretend he's wrong about everything. Sometimes I do get tunnel vision with deadlines. But I have never dismissed him, never insulted him, and we usually talk things out. I thought things were improving because I've been consciously making more time for him. We added a weekly date night. I cooked more often, and I even switched one big project to another manager so I could have less stress at home. 2 weeks ago, I got home from work and something fell off immediately. The house was too quiet. Our dog wasn't at the door. The closet looked emptier. Mark's desk was cleared. I panicked at first, thinking something terrible happened. There was a single note on the kitchen counter. Maybe now you'll notice what's missing. That was it. No explanation, no call, no text. I tried calling him repeatedly. Nothing. I called his mom, who acted cagey and said she hadn't spoken to him, but was sure he was doing what he needed to do. She hung up quickly. I checked our dog's location tag and saw he was at Mark's friend Aaron's place. So Mark had planned this. I didn't sleep the whole night. The next day, I filed a missing person report because at that point I didn't know if he was safe. When the officer called his phone from their end, Mark suddenly answered and told them he was fine, just taking space. They told him I was concerned, but he brushed it off. He finally messaged me later saying he'd moved out until I learned to appreciate him. I was furious and terrified at the same time. I told him that disappearing without warning was cruel and manipulative. He replied, "If you truly cared, you'd feel my absence deeply enough to understand the point." For the next week, he sent short, passive-aggressive texts like, "Do you miss me yet?" and "Notice anything different?" Meanwhile, he refused to tell me when he was coming back, if ever. I felt like I was losing my mind in my own home. Then his little lesson backfired. My brother, who's a lawyer, helped me look through our joint accounts and discovered that Mark had moved a substantial sum of money into a separate account under his own name the day before he left. Not illegal, because it was technically within limits, but shady enough. I confronted him. "Is this a separation? Are you leaving me?" He responded, "It's up to you. You decide how long this takes." That did something inside me. I realized he wasn't trying to fix our problems. He was trying to punish me. And punish me in a way that gave him all the control. I told him to come pick up the rest of his things because I was done. He tried to flip the script, saying I was failing the test and proving his point. I blocked him after that. 3 days later, he showed up at the house, shocked to find the locks changed. I talked to him through the doorbell cam because I didn't feel safe. He begged to be let in, saying he went too far and that lessons sometimes get messy. That phrasing made me even angrier. He wanted forgiveness without taking accountability. I told him he needed to stay elsewhere until we had a mediated conversation with a therapist or attorney present. He started crying, saying I was abandoning him. I reminded him he abandoned me first. He left eventually, but not before yelling that I was destroying the marriage. His family, of course, is furious with me. His mom said I'm weaponizing his emotions and that a wife shouldn't give up over one mistake. His sister said I should see it as a cry for help. My friends are split. Half say good riddance. Half say I'm being too harsh. The only person who seems to get it is my brother, who said, "Imagine if you'd done this to him. They'd call you unhinged." Mark keeps sending messages through friends that he wants to come home and start fresh, and that he never meant for things to escalate. He still insists it was a misguided lesson, not manipulation. But I can't unfeel what I felt when he vanished. It wasn't a lesson. It was emotional blackmail mixed with abandonment. And now he wants back in because I didn't chase him the way he imagined. So now I'm wondering if I'm being too cold. We did have a long history before this. He wasn't always like this. But something about the way he planned everything, the money transfer, the dog, the note, feels calculated. I don't know how to go back from that. My sister says I should at least give him a chance to apologize in person. My coworker thinks if I let him come back, I'm setting a dangerous precedent. My therapist says I'm not responsible for teaching him how to communicate like an adult. I keep thinking about the line he wrote. Maybe now you'll notice what's missing. I didn't notice what was missing. I noticed trust. I noticed security. I noticed the person I thought would never hurt me choosing to do exactly that. Now I'm stuck wondering. AITA for refusing to let him come home after he tried to teach me a lesson by disappearing? AITA for refusing to let my sister and her fiancé use my house for their weekend wedding retreat after they excluded my husband from the ceremony? A few months ago, my sister announced that instead of a traditional wedding, she wanted a full weekend celebration at a scenic lake in our state. The plan was to rent a lodge, host a Friday night bonfire, do a Saturday morning hike, have the ceremony that afternoon, then end with a brunch on Sunday. It sounded nice, but pretty expensive. They weren't doing a registry because they wanted experiences, not items. Translation: they needed everyone to chip in for the venue, meals, and activities. My husband and I own a house about 15 minutes from that lake. It's not a mansion, but it's big enough and in a beautiful area. When my sister got engaged, she would constantly joke that we were so lucky to have the perfect house for gatherings. I didn't think too much of it. Fast forward to 3 weeks before the wedding weekend. My sister called and asked if they could move the entire celebration to my home instead of the lodge they had planned because the lodge rental fell through. She said it with this casual tone, like she already knew I'd say yes. She wanted the bonfire in our backyard, the ceremony in our garden, the hiking meetup on our property's trail access, and brunch on our deck. She also asked if several of her fiancé's relatives could stay in our spare rooms and basement. I told her I needed time to think. She brushed it off and said she'd schedule vendors and send out updates. I reminded her that I hadn't agreed, and she acted like I was being dramatic. I asked my husband how he felt. He was hesitant, but said if I wanted to, we'd find a way. The only condition he had was that we'd need firm boundaries. Certain rooms off limits, cleanup responsibility not falling all on us, and guests not sleeping over. Reasonable things. I called my sister back to discuss logistics. Before I could bring up boundaries, she casually dropped that their ceremony was going to be super intimate, which I thought meant a small group. Instead, she explained that it would only be her fiancé, the officiant, and a few carefully chosen people who had been part of their journey together. I wasn't on that list. Neither was my husband. She quickly added that we were definitely invited to the bonfire, hike, and brunch, just not the actual ceremony. I thought she had to be joking. She wasn't. I asked why we were excluded from the most important part. She said I was family, obviously, but she thought I'd understand because she wanted the ceremony to be about energies that align. I asked what that meant. She said my husband had a heavy presence. I asked what that meant, and she said, awkwardly, that he was very grounded, which clashes with the spiritual aesthetic they envisioned. I told her that was ridiculous. She said it wasn't personal, and the ceremony was going to be filmed anyway, so I could watch it later. I told her that if we weren't invited to the ceremony, they certainly couldn't have the ceremony at our house. She immediately got defensive and said the ceremony space was just the prettiest option, and we were being rigid. I reminded her I never even agreed to host. She tried to guilt me by saying this would make or break the entire weekend. I said no. She called me petty. She called my husband overly territorial. She said I was putting a property line above family. I told her I wasn't letting her host a wedding at my home that I wasn't even allowed to attend. She said my attendance wasn't the issue. The flow of the ceremony was the issue. Word spread fast. My parents think I should have just let her use the house because it's only one afternoon and sisters make sacrifices. My dad even said I should be honored she wanted such an important event at my home. I said she didn't want me at the event, just my house. My mom said I was reading too far into it, that the ceremony was symbolic and the real celebration was the brunch. My husband is fully on my side. He's calm but angry, mainly because of the heavy presence and energy clash comments. Things escalated when my sister made a group post announcing that the wedding weekend was being scaled down due to unexpected obstacles. Several relatives assumed I caused the obstacles because they knew our house was near the lake. My sister didn't correct them. She just said she was sad some people insist on negativity. I called her and told her she could at least clarify I didn't ruin her plans. She said she wasn't going to get into drama. Then, a cousin texted me saying she'd heard we banned my sister from using our property out of jealousy. Another relative said we were holding the wedding hostage. I tried explaining the actual situation, but apparently my sister had been telling people that we demanded to be center stage in her ceremony and that it made her uncomfortable. That is the exact opposite of what happened. I confronted her again, and she said she only told people that because she didn't want to explain the emotional reasoning behind excluding us. She said the energy thing was too personal. I said it wasn't personal enough to exclude us, but too personal to tell the truth. I told her she could fix the narrative or I'd tell people myself. She accused me of trying to humiliate her. I told her she'd done that on her own. Since then, My parents have been urging me to apologize just to keep the peace. They keep saying the ceremony would have been over in 20 minutes and that I was overreacting to an unconventional choice. My mom specifically said, not everyone needs an audience for their vows, like that was ever the issue. My sister now won't talk to me at all unless I acknowledge how much stress my refusal caused and show compassion. She said she might reconsider inviting us to the Sunday brunch, but at this point I don't even want to go. My husband says we should just step back entirely and let her handle the fallout. He says we didn't ask to be involved, and we offered more than enough patience. Still, a part of me is wondering if I let my emotions, frustration, shock, insult, guide the situation too much. I know weddings are stressful. I know people make weird choices under pressure. But I cannot shake the feeling that she didn't want us there, only our house, and then expected gratitude for excluding us from our own property during their ceremony. So, AITA for refusing to let my sister use our home when she wasn't inviting us to the actual wedding ceremony happening there. AITA for refusing to apologize to my sister after her wedding turned into a disaster because of something I warned her about for months. My sister Emily and I have always had a complicated relationship. She is the golden child in my parents' eyes, the one who always gets what she wants, the one whose mistakes are quirky instead of irresponsible. I'm the older one, the planner, the fixer, the one who gets called when things go wrong. For most of my life, I didn't mind. But this wedding situation has pushed me beyond my limit. Emily got engaged last year to her fiancé, Mark. He's a nice enough guy, maybe a little absent-minded, but overall friendly. The problem started when Emily insisted on having a very elaborate outdoor wedding at a historical estate in our town. The venue is beautiful, but it's notorious for one thing: unpredictable animal for the nearby forest wandering onto the grounds. Deer, raccoons, foxes, even the occasional peacock from a neighboring farm. It's a local running joke. Everyone knows this. Everyone except Emily, apparently. When she chose the venue, I told her multiple times to hire extra staff or at least coordinate with the estate's management to secure the area better. She brushed me off every time, saying I was being dramatic and that she didn't want her elegant ceremony cluttered with random guards walking around. She believed that because other weddings there had gone fine, hers would too. As maid of honor, I was put in charge of a lot of planning tasks. I did everything she asked, even when her requests were ridiculous, because I genuinely wanted her to have the day she imagined. But every time I brought up the animal issue, she would roll her eyes and make some comment about how I always expect the worst. Fast forward to the wedding day. Everything started smoothly. The weather was perfect, guests were arriving, the decorations looked stunning. The ceremony was set up under a huge old oak tree. Emily was getting ready inside the estate house, and I was outside with the coordinator making sure everything was in place. About 20 minutes before the ceremony was supposed to start, I noticed a raccoon near the refreshment table. It was nosing around one of the drink dispensers. I mentioned it to the coordinator, who told me they usually wander off on their own. I didn't want to ruin Emily's mood, so I didn't tell her. Maybe that was my first mistake. The ceremony began, and Emily walked down the aisle looking genuinely gorgeous. I was happy for her despite everything. But as the officiant started speaking, some rustling came from the bushes behind the chairs. At first, I thought it was another raccoon. But then everyone heard it. A loud honking shriek. A peacock strutted out. A real, full-sized, iridescent peacock from the neighbor's farm, tail feathers spread like it was auditioning for a nature documentary. People giggled nervously at first. Emily looked confused. The officiant tried to continue. But then, as if some switch flipped, the peacock decided it was time to assert dominance. It marched straight toward the floral arch, hopped onto one of the low tables, and knocked over a vase. Water and flowers went everywhere. Guests gasped. Emily froze. Mark tried to shoo it away, which only enraged the bird. It let out a scream, so loud some guests covered their ears, then flapped its wings wildly and sent petals flying. The bridesmaids scattered. I grabbed Emily's bouquet and tried to help, but the peacock lunged toward the bright flowers like they were some kind of rival. People were shouting. Chairs were toppling. Another peacock appeared from the trees, adding to the chaos like a feathered sidekick from hell. The entire ceremony dissolved into a crowd of well-dressed adults fleeing two surprisingly aggressive birds. Eventually, the estate staff rounded them up and chased them off, but by then the ceremony area was wrecked. Decorations broken, petals everywhere, some seating practically destroyed. Emily was livid. Not just upset, absolutely furious. She blamed me. She screamed that I had jinxed her wedding with constant negativity, that I should have done something, that as maid of honor it was my job to prevent disasters. She told me that if I hadn't obsessed about animals ruining the wedding, it wouldn't have happened, that somehow I manifested it. I had spent months trying to warn her. I had offered solutions. I had tried, repeatedly, to help her prevent exactly this. But in the moment, with all the emotions running high, I tried to calmly remind her of those conversations. She cut me off, yelling that I always think I'm smarter than everyone else, and that I should have just kept quiet and let her enjoy her day without my input. Our parents sided with her immediately, saying she was just overwhelmed and I should apologize to keep the peace. Mark's family looked mortified, not at the birds, but at the screaming match. Since then, Emily has refused to speak to me unless I apologize for ruining her wedding experience. She says the peacocks were an act of nature that I turned into a prophecy, and my energy caused everything to fall apart. She truly believes this. I don't believe I did anything wrong. I didn't control the birds. I didn't pick the venue. I warned her. I helped as much as I could when the chaos happened. And I genuinely think her blaming me is unfair and honestly delusional. But now the family is divided, and I'm being pressured from all sides to just apologize so everyone can move on. They say I'm being stubborn and that it's just words. I don't feel like apologizing for something I didn't do. So, AITA for refusing to apologize to my sister after her wedding turned into a feather-filled disaster, and she blamed me for it. AITA for refusing to let my brother and his fiancée use my wedding venue after they secretly booked it behind my back and expected me to just give it up. My mother says I'm being dramatic. My dad is pretending he's Switzerland, and my group chat is split between calling my brother entitled and telling me I overreacted in the most theatrical way possible. I need outside perspective because the whole thing feels so surreal, I keep wondering if I hallucinated parts of it. I, 29F, got engaged last year to my fiancé Liam, 31M. We're both pretty low-key people, but we wanted one thing, a specific old greenhouse turn event space about 2 hours from where we live. It's gorgeous, has huge glass walls, string lights everywhere, and a small orchard behind it. We went there on our second date and joked we'd get married there someday. When we got engaged, we checked availability, and there was exactly one spring weekend left, May 17th next year. We booked it immediately and paid the deposit. My younger brother, Evan, 26, got engaged to his girlfriend Clara, 25F, 3 months after us. They're the opposite of low-key. She wants a big dramatic wedding. He goes along with whatever she wants, and that's fine. What isn't fine is what happened 2 weeks ago. My mom asked to take me out to brunch. When we sat down, both she and my brother were already there. That was the first red flag. My mom cleared her throat and said something like, "Sweetie, we need to talk about a small scheduling conflict." I had no idea what she was talking about, so she explained that Evan and Clara had accidentally booked their wedding at the same venue on the same date as ours. I actually laughed because I thought it was a joke. But Evan looked stressed and Clara looked annoyed, which is her default expression, so my laughter died pretty quickly. Then my mom clarified. They had known about our venue and date. Clara fell in love with the greenhouse when she saw the pictures I posted, but it was booked solid except May 17th. According to my mom, they assumed we would be willing to change our date or switch venues since we aren't as particular, and Clara would be absolutely devastated if she couldn't have her dream space. I asked how they even booked it when we already had. My mom hesitated, then admitted they told the venue coordinator they were with us and needed to arrange details. The venue apparently mistakenly believed it was all for the same event and approved their contract. By the time the error surfaced, Clara had paid the deposit and refused to take back updates. Instead, she figured I'd understand and move my wedding. I was stunned. Liam wasn't even there yet, and I still wanted to turn to someone and confirm I wasn't losing my mind. I told them absolutely not. We booked the venue a year earlier. We made the deposit first, and we weren't changing anything. Evan tried to guilt me, saying they had already sent out, save the tentative date, cards, and Clara had told her whole family. Then Clara spoke up for the first time all brunch. She said I was being selfish and inflexible over vibes, and that she couldn't imagine getting married anywhere else. She said the greenhouse was her aesthetic, and ours was more casual, so she should get priority. I told her she could either pick a new date or a new venue, but I wasn't giving up mine. My mom jumped in saying I was making things harder than they needed to be, that Clara was family now, and that I should be gracious. Evan kept repeating that it was just one day. I said exactly. It's my one day. I paid the bill, told them I wasn't discussing it further until they apologized, and left. About 3 hours later, after I'd told Liam everything, I got a massive group text from Clara. She accused me of ruining her vision, called me immature, and even said I was jealous because her wedding would be more elegant. She ended by saying it would be unfair for two weddings so close in the family to have drastically different levels of refinement, so she needed the nicer venue. I didn't reply. The next day, the venue coordinator emailed me apologizing for the confusion and confirming our contract superseded theirs. She said she would refund Clara's deposit and offer her discount at other dates. Apparently, that set Clara off even worse. She demanded I call the venue and relinquish my date out of sisterly love. I blocked her for a few days. Then the phone calls from relatives started. My aunt saying I should share the venue. My grandmother saying I should step aside because I'm older and mine will be sooner anyway someday if I truly love Liam. That one didn't even make sense. My cousin texted me a crying emoji and said she didn't want to choose between us. But here's the kicker. Last weekend, my parents hosted a barbecue. I didn't want to go, but Liam convinced me we should at least show our faces. When we got there, everything was fine at first, until Clara marched up and demanded to talk privately. I refused because last time ended in her verbally attacking me. She insisted anyway, so I said Liam stays with me. She started off pretending to be calm. She said she hoped we could find a compromise, and I said the compromise was simple. They take another date or another venue. She exploded, full screaming, crying, saying I was purposely humiliating her, that she wanted the venue so badly, and that since she and Evan were younger and starting out, we should set an example of generosity. Liam stepped between us and told her to stop yelling. That's when Evan jumped in and shoved Liam's shoulder. Not a huge shove, but enough to be aggressive. Liam told him very clearly not to do that again. My dad finally intervened and pulled Evan away. My mom started crying that her kids were fighting over something silly. Something silly. Liam and I left immediately after. Since then, my mom keeps calling asking me to just let it go and be the bigger person. My dad thinks I shouldn't punish Evan for Clara's behavior. Evan has sent a half-hearted message saying he regrets the shove, but still thinks I'm blowing things out of proportion. Clara's been silent, except for one post on her private story the mutual cousin screenshot for me. A picture of the greenhouse with the caption, "Some people take what isn't meant for them." Liam wants us to stay firm. I'm still furious, but I keep hearing everyone act like I caused the drama by refusing to accommodate them. I know weddings can bring out the worst in people, but this feels extreme. So here I am asking strangers on the internet. AITA for refusing to give up my wedding venue, even though my brother and his fiancée want it and accidentally booked it too? Hey friends, if you enjoy this content, don't forget to like the video and share your thoughts in the comments. We really want to know what you like and what can be improved. What do you think of the video? Are there any topics you'd like to see in future videos? Your feedback really helps us get better. Thanks for being with us. AITA for refusing to let my sister stay with me after she blew up my carefully planned quiet life. A few years ago, I finally escaped the chaos of my childhood home. Growing up, my parents were loud, impulsive, and constantly bringing people into the house with no warning. My older sister, Jenna, inherited their energy. She jumps from job to job, has a rotating lineup of dramatic partners, and views rules as emergency-only guidelines. I went the opposite way. I like order, quiet, schedules, and knowing exactly what to expect. By the time I turned 30, I found myself craving stability so badly that I moved 3 states away, bought a tiny 2-bedroom townhouse, and built a life that finally felt like mine. I work remotely, read after dinner, and have a social circle of people who actually show up when they say they will. For the first time, I felt like I could breathe. I kept some contact with my family, but from a safe distance. I love them, but they live in a tornado of their own creation. I visited for holidays, called when I had the bandwidth, and try not to get sucked back in. Then this spring, Jenna called me sobbing. Her boyfriend had kicked her out after a huge fight. She had lost her job 2 weeks earlier, and she had nowhere to go. She wanted to come stay with me for just a month while she got back on her feet. She didn't ask so much as assume it was settled. I hesitated. Every part of me screamed that this was going to blow up my quiet life. But I caved because she's my sister, and she sounded desperate. I made only 3 rules. No guests without asking, no screaming arguments on my property, and she needed to clean up after herself. She agreed instantly. In hindsight, that should have been my first warning. She arrived with twice as many bags as she said she had, dropped them in the living room, immediately complained about my no shoes indoors rule, and asked what was for dinner. That first night, I blamed stress. But the next day, I woke up to dirty dishes, a half-eaten pizza on the counter, and my cat hiding under the bed because she had blasted music at 7 a.m. I reminded her of the rules. She apologized, but it was the kind of apology where the words are right, but the tone is annoyed. Over the next 3 weeks, things escalated. She invited friends over without asking. They stayed past midnight laughing and drinking. When I confronted her, she told me I needed to loosen up and that I was acting like her ex. She applied to only 2 jobs and spent hours scrolling on her phone. She borrowed my clothes without permission. She used my skincare products to the point that I had to reorder them. My peaceful house gradually turned into the exact environment I had run away from. One morning, I woke up to find my 2nd bedroom door locked. Jenna had used it to hook up with some guy she met the previous night at a bar. A complete stranger was in my house at 5 a.m. Meanwhile, my cat was terrified and scratching at my bedroom door. I lost it. I demanded she open the door and get him out immediately. She rolled her eyes and told me I was overreacting. After the guy left, I told her she needed to be out by the end of the week. She exploded. She accused me of abandoning her, of choosing a boring little life, over family, of being judgmental and cold. She called our parents, who then called me to say I should be more compassionate and that Jenna just needed stability. I told them I was willing to help, but not at the cost of losing my own stability. During the next few days, the atmosphere in my house was so tense that I started working from coffee shops just to avoid being there. She barely spoke to me, except to slam cabinets or mutter under her breath. But then, on the last night before she was supposed to leave, she did something that sealed the whole situation. I came home from a walk to find the smoke alarm going off and the kitchen covered in smoke. Jenna had tried to cook something drunk and had walked away entirely. Thankfully, nothing caught fire, but it scared me badly. When I yelled her name, I found her passed out on the couch with a bottle on the floor. She mumbled that she didn't mean to before rolling over. I called my parents and told them she needed to leave the next morning, not the end of the week. They reluctantly agreed and said they would drive up to get her. I spent that night barely sleeping, afraid she'd do something dangerous again. The next morning she packed silently, cried in the doorway, and told me that I had turned my back on her when she needed me most. She said she hoped I'd never be in her position because I'd know what it felt like to be treated like a burden. Then she left. My parents keep saying I should have been more patient, that people don't grow in perfectly controlled environments, and that my boundaries are too strict. My friends say I went above and beyond, and that Jenna treated my home and my kindness like disposable conveniences. Now it's been a month. My house is finally quiet again. My cat is back to normal, but I still feel guilty. She's staying with my parents now, and they call often to tell me how difficult she has been. Every time they do, part of me wonders if I abandoned her when she really needed help, or if I simply protected the life I built. So, AITA for refusing to let my sister stay with me after she repeatedly broke my rules, disrespected my home, and created the exact chaos I moved away to escape. AITA for refusing to sell the house my late grandmother left me, even though it means my entire family is calling me selfish and ruining a deal they were apparently counting on. I'm 28, and my grandmother passed away last year. She practically raised me. My parents divorced when I was 9, and both of them were so caught up in their new lives and relationships that I ended up staying with my grandmother most of the time. She was the type of person who remembered every birthday, every school event, every tiny detail about who you were. She taught me how to cook, helped me with projects, told me stories from her childhood, and created this warm, quiet pocket of a home that felt like the only place I could breathe. When she died, she left her house to me. Not to my mother, not to my uncle, not split between anyone. Just me. She wrote a very clear will and even a letter explaining that she wanted me to have stability, safety, and a place that felt like mine in a way it never had growing up. The house is old, beautiful in that creaky, sunlit way older homes are, and full of memories. I moved in after she passed and did some small updates, but kept most things the way she had them. My family didn't say much about it at first, though I could sense the irritation. My uncle made passive comments about how she clearly wasn't in her right mind near the end. My mother tried to guilt-trip me by saying she wished Grandma had been more fair, since as her daughter, she should have had something. Fast forward to now, and the issue has exploded. Apparently, my uncle has been talking to a developer who wants to buy the house plus 3 adjacent properties, 2 belonging to neighbors, 1 to a distant cousin, to tear them down and build some ugly modern townhouses. My uncle told the developer he could probably work something out with me. He never actually asked me. He just assumed. The developer offered a large sum, more than the house's market value. My uncle saw dollar signs. My mother got involved. My cousins got involved. People I haven't spoken to since high school suddenly discover my phone number to let me know that everyone stands to benefit and that it's time to think like an adult. I told them all no. Firmly. Repeatedly. I told them the house means something to me. It isn't a property to cash out on. It's my home. And even if it weren't, I'm not obligated to sell just because they want me to. Well, that apparently makes me selfish. My uncle claimed I was ruining his retirement plan, which shocked me, because how does my house factor into that? My mother said I'm dishonoring my grandmother's legacy by isolating myself in a shrine. A cousin accused me of letting everyone suffer financially over a building you're emotionally attached to like a child. One night 2 months ago, I came home and found my uncle and cousin at the house. They had used a spare key my grandmother had given my mother years ago. They walked around pointing at things, talking about what would need to be removed and how much the foundation might be worth. They treated it like it was already sold. I was furious and threw them out, changed the locks the next day, and told everyone I'd call the police if they trespassed again. That's when the messaging truly turned hostile. I got long texts telling me I was heartless, that I was ruining a life-changing opportunity for the entire family, that I was proving I didn't care about them and only wanted to hoard something that didn't rightfully belong solely to me. My mother cried over the phone saying she needed the money to help pay off her own house and that I was abandoning her. I tried explaining that they had no idea what the developer might actually do, no understanding of the real estate market, and no right to assume I wanted to sell. They dismissed everything I said as emotional rambling. It got so bad that I stopped talking to them entirely. Now, they're campaigning through extended family members to pressure me. A cousin even had the audacity to show up with a printout of the potential profit distribution the family had apparently made for everyone, including me, as if that would sway me. They genuinely acted like the deal was set, like they just needed me to sign papers and stop being difficult. I told them again, I'm not selling. No amount of money will replace what this house means to me. And more importantly, my grandmother wanted me to have it, not sell it to fund my uncle's retirement or my mother's renovations. And here's where I'm conflicted. My therapist says I'm allowed to want stability and sentiment. My friends say my family is wildly out of line, but a small part of me wonders if I'm being too stubborn. It's a lot of money, a truly life-changing amount, and part of me feels guilty that I'm the only one who was given something tangible by my grandmother. My mother wasn't perfect, but she's still my mother. My uncle isn't a great guy, but he's family. I keep thinking about whether I'm being too emotional, clinging too hard to something just because it's full of memories. On the other hand, every time I imagine selling, I feel physically sick. I walk through the house and remember where my grandmother sat to sew, where we baked together, where I cried after my first breakup while she made hot chocolate. I can't imagine bulldozers ripping it down. I also can't shake the anger that they all assumed they had a right to something that was never theirs. So now the whole family says I'm selfish, dramatic, immature, and ruining their plans. I'm being called ungrateful and cruel, and told I'm driving a wedge through the family. Some cousins said they'd wash their hands of me if I didn't reconsider, which honestly might be a blessing. But I still feel conflicted. AITA for refusing to sell the house. Even though the rest of my family claims I'm destroying their financial future by keeping it, AITA for refusing to pretend my sister-in-law's emotional support peacock was a normal guest at my wedding and then causing a family blow-up when I asked her to leave. For context, I'm 32 and my now wife is 31. We planned a smallish wedding, about 90 guests, mostly close family and longtime friends. It was held at a historic inn that we booked specifically because of its gorgeous gardens and strict no animals inside policy. That rule mattered because my wife is seriously allergic to bird dander. She can walk past pigeons or whatever outside, but being indoors with a bird for several hours could trigger a reaction that requires steroids and, in the worst case, an ER visit. My sister-in-law, who I'll call Mara, is married to my brother. Mara is dramatic. She's the kind of person who collects diagnoses she finds on social media, insists she can't digest water unless it's at a celestial pH, and once threw out all my brother's food because a podcast told her soy sauce can cause energy blockages. She also has a habit of bringing unusual animals places. Over the last few years, she's cycled through an emotional support goat, a therapy raccoon, and at one point she tried to bring a miniature pig to my parents' anniversary dinner at a restaurant. Now, her main companion is a peacock named Lumine. Yes, a full-sized, loud, iridescent peacock. Apparently, she acquired him from a sanctuary that didn't quite know what to do with him. She insists that Lumine has saved her mental well-being, that he knows how to sense and dispel negative frequencies, and that he needs to be with her at all major events because he stabilizes her aura. You get the picture. Months before the wedding, we told everyone, repeatedly, that no animals were allowed indoors by venue policy, and that my wife's allergy made birds specifically a non-starter. People with legitimate service animals would be accommodated outdoors, but that didn't apply here. Mara said nothing at the time. Fast forward to the wedding day. Everything is going smoothly. Guests are arriving. I'm already in the groom's suite. My wife is getting ready, and my brother knocks on the door with the sheepish look he gets when Mara is doing something unreasonable. He says, "Hey man, please don't freak out," but Mara brought Lumine. Apparently, she showed up at the entrance carrying the peacock in what I can only describe as a giant glitter-covered harness, plus a leash. Lumine was already squawking. The coordinator told her animals weren't permitted, and she responded by insisting he was her emotional support animal, and therefore a medical necessity. She even had a laminated card she printed at home that said, "Certified ESA," though the coordinator had seen many of those and knew they didn't override venue rules. Still, she stalled long enough that she managed to get through to the garden area before being stopped again. I went out to talk to her myself. She was standing there holding this huge bird like it was a purse, feathers shedding everywhere. Guests were staring. Lumine kept making that shrill, honking noise peacocks make, and kids were either crowding around or running away in terror. I told her she needed to take the bird back to her car and that I was sorry, but we had been extremely clear. She immediately got defensive, saying I was discriminating against her medical needs and that without Lumine, her anxiety would be unmanageable and she might faint or emotionally destabilize during the ceremony. I reminded her that my wife's physical allergy was a real health issue and we could not risk it. She accused my wife of weaponizing her sensitivity to nature. When I held firm, she dramatically declared that she would not be part of a family that prioritizes aesthetics over well-being. I said no one was asking her to leave, just the peacock. But she insisted they were a bonded pair and that she couldn't be separated from him during stressful moments. After 10 minutes of back and forth that was delaying our photo schedule, I finally told her that if she refused to part with the bird, she could not attend the wedding. At that, she stormed off toward the parking lot, bird in tow, yelling that I had shattered her trust. My brother apologized a dozen times, said he'd go talk to her, and left with her. I figured that was the end of the drama. The ceremony went beautifully, but halfway through the reception, my parents pulled me aside looking panicked. It turned out that Mara had driven home, posted an epic rant on social media, claiming we humiliated a woman struggling with mental illness. And a few relatives who hadn't been at the wedding were messaging my parents asking why we banned her. Some cousins even shared her post publicly, calling us cruel. Meanwhile, my brother sent me a text saying he wasn't coming back because Mara was crying too hard. My parents were upset we hadn't found a middle ground, like letting the bird wait in a shaded area outside or letting Mara sit far away from my wife. I pointed out that she refused to be separated from the bird at all. Also, the venue specifically didn't allow animals anywhere on the premises. They said it was still a shame we couldn't avoid the fallout on our wedding day. The whole thing cast a shadow over the rest of the night. My wife kept apologizing even though she'd done nothing wrong. Some relatives left early, whispering about family drama. And the next morning, we woke up to a 3-paragraph text from Mara declaring that we traumatized her, undermined her mental health, and publicly invalidated Lumine's role in her life. She said she would need space from us until we acknowledge the harm we caused. My brother is caught in the middle and has asked me to just apologize for the sake of peace. I said no. I told him I wasn't apologizing for enforcing a boundary that we stated months in advance, especially one related to my wife's health and the venue's rules. He replied that Mara now feels unsafe around us and that if we ever want her at family gatherings again, we need to show empathy. Some relatives now think we overreacted and should have let her have her coping mechanism, saying the wedding is just one day while Mara's mental state is fragile. Others think she was being ridiculous and that bringing a giant peacock to someone else's wedding is obviously out of line. So here I am, weeks later, still getting guilt-trippy messages, still being painted as the villain for not wanting a bird inside the venue, and wondering whether I handled it badly, even though it felt like the only reasonable choice. AITA? AITA for refusing to attend my sister's family-only wedding after she tried to uninvite my husband because he's quiet and ruins the vibe. My sister Lily and I grew up pretty close, even if we're wildly different people. She's loud, extroverted, the center of attention at every gathering, and constantly posting curated life moments online. I'm quieter, more reserved, and prefer smaller groups. Still, we've always supported each other. Or so I thought. Lily got engaged last year to her fiancé, who is fine but honestly seems exhausted by her constant need for attention. She started planning the wedding almost immediately and made it clear she wanted this big aesthetic event she'd later post all over social media. So, no real shock there. The issue began with the bridal party. She asked me to be her maid of honor, and I accepted. I love her and figured I could deal with the stress for her sake. But even early on, she made weird comments about my husband, Mark. Things like, "Are you sure he'll want to come to the rehearsal dinner?" Those things can be overwhelming for people like him. Or, maybe Mark could skip the morning photos. He doesn't look comfortable in pictures. For context, Mark isn't shy or rude. He's simply soft-spoken and thoughtful. He listens more than he talks. He's also the person everyone in our family comes to for help because he's patient and calm. But since he doesn't force himself into the spotlight, my sister seems to think he's defective. The real problem started when Lily organized an engagement party that she described as intimate and classy. She asked me to make sure Mark didn't fade into the background too much because it would throw off the energy in the photos. She literally said that. I told her she was being unfair. Mark attended, behaved perfectly normal, and everyone enjoyed talking to him except Lily, who later complained he looked too serious in some candid shots. Fast forward to a few months ago. Invitations for the wedding were going out. Lily and I were finalizing bride party stuff when she casually mentioned she was revising the guest list. She hesitated before saying, I just think the wedding would feel more cohesive if it's high-energy people only. I didn't understand what she meant, so I asked. She looked uncomfortable before blurting out, "I think maybe Mark should sit this one out." I genuinely thought she was joking. I laughed. She didn't. She doubled down, saying, "You know how he is. I want everyone chatting, dancing, laughing. He's just so quiet. It won't fit the aesthetic. This is the biggest day of my life. I want high vibes, not mellow energy." I told her that was absurd and insulting. She said she wasn't insulting him, merely protecting the atmosphere. She suggested that since I'd be busy with maid of honor duties anyway, it wasn't like I'd get to sit with him much. She even offered to help him feel included by letting him join via video call during the ceremony, like he was an out-of-town relative. I left before I said something I'd regret. Mark asked what happened, and I told him everything. He got quiet, then said he didn't want to cause conflict and that he'd understand if I wanted to keep the peace by attending alone. That's exactly why I love him. But I told him no. I wasn't going to a wedding that treated my husband like a defective accessory to hide. I gave Lily a chance to rethink things. I called her and calmly said that if Mark wasn't welcome, I wouldn't attend either. I wasn't issuing an ultimatum. I was stating a boundary. She snapped. She said I was being dramatic, that I was choosing my husband over my family, and that I was ruining her once-in-a-lifetime event. I told her I wasn't the one excluding people. She ranted about how I should understand her need for an energetic space because this wedding was content-worthy and she wanted only people who would match the tone. I asked if she was planning her marriage or a commercial. She hung up on me. My parents then got involved. They called me saying they understood Lily's preferences and that maybe it would be best for me to attend alone so the wedding wouldn't be overshadowed by tension. I asked, what tension? They said, well, Mark's personality. I told them I couldn't believe they were entertaining this. Then my mom said something that really sealed things for me. It wouldn't kill you to just go along with what Lily wants. She's always been sensitive about her image. Sensitive about her image. My husband isn't a prop. He's a human being. I told them I wasn't attending. They said they hoped I would change my mind. In the weeks that followed, my family kept pushing me. A few relatives sent long messages saying they knew weddings were stressful and that I should give Lily grace. One cousin even wrote, "It's not personal against Mark. He's just not the life of the party." I replied, "That is personal." They didn't respond. Then Lily sent me a long message saying she was officially replacing me as maid of honor since she needed someone fully supportive. She wrote that she was disappointed but accepts my decision to distance myself and hoped I wouldn't regret missing the most beautiful day of our family story. I told her I'd always love her, but I wasn't going to participate in something built on disrespect. Reactions are mixed. Some say I'm overreacting. Others say Lily is being unkind. Mark says he's sorry I had to choose and wishes my family didn't see him as a vibe killer. That broke my heart. Now the wedding is next week. I'm invited only through a formal static email. No personal apology. No change. My parents have accepted her decision and are cold toward me for making things harder. I keep wondering, should I have attended alone just to avoid the drama? Or is standing up for my spouse the right thing to do? AITA? AITA for refusing to help my brother after he got himself into a financial mess. Even though the rest of my family thinks I'm being cruel, this all started about 6 months ago. My younger brother, Ben, who's 27, decided to quit his stable job in marketing to pursue his passion for artisanal candle making. I wasn't thrilled, but I've always believed in people chasing their dreams, so I told him I'd support him morally, even if I didn't invest financially. Ben is the kind of person who's always looking for the next big thing and tends to leap without thinking about the consequences. My parents, however, have a soft spot for him and tend to bail him out whenever things go south. So, Ben starts his candle business, rents a small studio space, and buys all these fancy materials that cost more than he actually had. Predictably, the business flopped almost immediately. He burned through his savings, accrued a bit of debt, and suddenly he was panicking. Instead of reevaluating his approach or considering a side job to stabilize himself, he came to me and asked for a $10,000 loan. He told me it was just a temporary setback, and that he would pay me back once his business took off. I told him honestly that I wasn't in a position to give him that kind of money, $10,000 is a significant amount, and I have my own expenses, including a mortgage and student loans. Ben got really defensive and said, "You're my sister. Family should help each other." I tried explaining that supporting him emotionally is different from taking a huge financial risk that could ruin me. I also suggested that he talk to a financial advisor, take on a part-time job, or even apply for a small business loan if he really believed his business could survive. He didn't take any of this well and stormed off. A week later, my parents called me and said that Ben had been crying to them about how heartless I was being. They argued that family is supposed to help each other in times of need, and that I was prioritizing money over blood. I reminded them that I've supported Ben in countless ways over the years, picking him up after breakups, helping him move apartments, letting him crash at my place when he needed it. But that financial support of this magnitude is different. My father said that I was being selfish and that sometimes family sacrifices for each other. My mother just kept repeating that I was ruining my relationship with Ben. Things escalated when Ben started texting and calling me constantly. He would send links to his business page, photos of his failed attempts at marketing, and even some vague threats about finding out who really has your back when everything collapses. I stopped responding to him because I was tired of the guilt tripping, but this made my parents even angrier. They told me I was creating a rift in the family and that I should reconsider. To complicate matters, Ben's friends and some extended family members started chiming in. Apparently, Ben told everyone that I refused to help him because I didn't care about him, which is only partly true. Of course, I care, but I also care about my own financial stability. The narrative became that I was the villain, the selfish sibling who couldn't see the bigger picture. Last month, Ben's situation got worse. He maxed out his credit cards and now owes over $20,000. And unsurprisingly, he's blaming me and everyone else who didn't help. He posted a long message on Facebook about how some families are supportive while others abandon their own. And my name was not mentioned, but my parents assumed I was the target. I didn't respond publicly because I didn't want to escalate the drama, but my parents call me twice a week demanding I reconsider helping him. I finally had a long conversation with my parents and tried to explain my perspective. I said that I could help in non-financial ways, like helping him set up marketing for his candles, offering advice on managing his debt, or helping him find a part-time job, but I could not give him tens of thousands of dollars. My parents basically told me that I was being unreasonable, unkind, and that my relationship with Ben would be damaged permanently if I didn't just do the right thing. I feel like I'm being completely rational here. Giving him the kind of money would put me at risk, and I don't believe in bailing someone out of every mistake they make, especially when they refuse to take responsibility. Ben has been reckless, and it seems like he's expecting me to fix all his problems with cash instead of actually making an effort himself. But now my entire family is upset with me. Ben is ignoring me, and I feel like I'm being portrayed as the villain for basically having boundaries. So Reddit, AITA for refusing to financially bail my brother out. Even though my family thinks I'm cruel? AITA for refusing to attend my brother's wedding after he asked me to do something I can't support? I, 28F, have always had a somewhat complicated relationship with my family, mostly because my brother, Jason, 31M, has a very controlling personality and tends to make demands rather than requests. Our parents have always enabled him to some degree, which has caused a lot of tension growing up. Despite that, we were fairly close in our teen years, but things started changing when he went off to college and I stayed local for work and school. Recently, Jason got engaged to his fiancée, Emily, 30F, and while I was happy for him, I quickly realized planning this wedding was going to be challenging. He announced early on that he had a very specific vision and that anyone involved needed to fully comply with his rules. I tried to brush it off as typical wedding stress, but it escalated quickly. A few months ago, he called me to ask if I would be his maid of honor, a term I know he uses loosely since he doesn't really believe in traditional roles. I said yes, but I warned him that I'm very busy with work and school, and that my availability is limited. He waved it off, saying he just wanted me to be there for him emotionally. I thought that was reasonable. Then, last week, he asked me to do something that completely caught me off guard. Jason and Emily had decided that they wanted a social media-free wedding, but they also wanted a guest book in the form of short video clips from the bridal party, giving advice or sharing memories. He asked me to write and record a funny story about him and Emily and post it to their private wedding website. At first, I thought this was fine. I enjoy writing and can tell stories. But when he sent me a list of examples, I realized he wasn't asking for a story about a general memory. They were asking for a story that portrayed Emily in a certain very positive, very flattering light and made Jason look like the perfect boyfriend, complete with inside jokes that, frankly, I don't find funny. I don't have a problem celebrating their relationship, but I also can't just invent stories about them or act like he has never made mistakes or hurt people. I told him I wasn't comfortable creating something that was partly fiction and partly performative, and that I'd be happy to share my own honest story of our relationship, which includes some awkward and frustrating moments as well as the fun ones. He completely lost it. He told me that my negative energy was not welcome at his wedding and that if I didn't comply, I shouldn't even bother showing up. I explained that I absolutely want to support him, but I can't be dishonest for the sake of appearances. He said that being honest would embarrass him in front of everyone, and that I was choosing my own ego over family. I tried to reason with him calmly, saying that family isn't about pretending everything is perfect, but he accused me of being manipulative for making this about me. At this point, I told him I couldn't participate in the video, and that if he expected me to attend, I would do so quietly without contributing to the performance. He responded by saying I shouldn't come at all if I can't play along. This has caused a massive blow-up in our family group chat. Our parents are upset with me, saying I should just do it for Jason's happiness, and that I'm overreacting. A couple of cousins have chimed in saying I should comply, because otherwise I'm being dramatic and ruining their special day. I told them that this isn't about drama. It's about honesty and not pretending something is perfect when it isn't. They say I'm selfish. I reached out to a few friends who have been through wedding drama, and most of them said they understand my position, but some also suggested that maybe I could just lie a little to keep the peace. I'm really torn because I don't want to alienate my family, but I also feel like I'd be betraying my own integrity if I went along with this. In the last few days, Jason has made posts on social media subtly throwing shade at me, implying that I'm not family-oriented and that I've chosen to be absent. It's been hurtful, and I can feel the pressure from our extended family mounting. I've considered attending anyway, but the thought of smiling and pretending I think he's perfect when he's made choices I find harmful really stresses me out. I know some people might say I'm overthinking a wedding video, but I feel like this is a pattern with him. He wants everyone to present a curated image that hides anything uncomfortable, and I don't want to encourage that. I also know my parents will likely side with him no matter what, which makes me hesitant to even try to reason with him again. I feel trapped between my principles and the fear of being cut out of family events. So here I am, trying to figure out if I'm the asshole for refusing to participate in this wedding video and potentially not attending the wedding at all because I refuse to be dishonest about my own stories. Am I wrong for choosing honesty over family expectations in this situation? I feel like if I go, I'll be seen as a villain anyway, but if I don't go, I might completely lose my family support. I really don't want that, but I also can't compromise who I am for one day, no matter how important it is to Jason. I just don't know what the right move is, and the constant guilt trips are making it harder to think clearly. So AITA here? Length: approximately 6,450 characters if you want. I can also write an expanded version that hits closer to 7,000 characters with more drama, dialogue, and family history. Basically a full Reddit saga version that reads like the most popular posts. It would be even more immersive. Do you want me to do that? AITA for refusing to give my sister's children a huge inheritance because I think they're being spoiled. I, 38M, have always been the more frugal, practical sibling. My younger sister, Laura, 34F, has 3 kids and tends to indulge them in ways I just can't get on board with. To set the scene, I inherited a fair amount of money from our parents when they passed away a few years ago. My parents were very clear with me that they wanted me to manage it wisely, and I've always taken that seriously. I've invested, saved, and made careful decisions to ensure that the money lasts because, honestly, I've seen too many friends blow through inheritances and end up worse off than before. Laura, on the other hand, has has always had a more live-for-the-moment approach. She's generous in some ways, but she tends to spend impulsively, often on her kids. Her 3 children, ages 6, 9, and 11, get almost everything they ask for, from expensive toys to pricey birthday parties, even when it's unnecessary. She's also incredibly involved in social media parenting communities, where parents showcase their extravagant lifestyles. I've tried to be supportive, but every conversation about saving, budgeting, or thinking long-term gets met with defensiveness or rolling eyes. When our parents died, I was the one who handled most of the estate matters as I lived closest and had the most stable situation. I didn't want to make things complicated, so I put some money aside for Laura, but I made it very clear that this was to help with essential expenses and schooling, not to fund her children's constant wants. I even offered to help her set up a trust fund for their education with specific guidelines. My idea was to give the kids a foundation without letting them grow up thinking they can demand anything they want. She seemed okay with that at the time, but I later found out she didn't follow through and instead started asking me for more money under various pretenses. Things came to a head last month. My parents had left me some property, which I had been planning to leave as part of my estate to my own children. I have 2, 10 and 7. Laura found out and immediately started dropping hints about how much her kids deserve to inherit some of it. She framed it as a family obligation and guilt me, saying things like, "They'll never have what they deserve if you don't think about them," and "Our family is supposed to stick together. Why do you play favorites?" I tried to explain that the property and money had been managed according to our parents' wishes and that I had a responsibility to my own family. But she kept pushing, suggesting that I was being selfish. Then she escalated it. She sent me an email listing every gift she had ever given me or my kids, alongside examples of times I hadn't given her children similar gifts. She made it sound like I was morally obligated to give her children a bigger share because I hadn't matched her generosity. I was shocked. I've always tried to maintain boundaries and avoid enabling bad financial habits. The kids are young, and I don't want them to grow up thinking they can demand anything simply because they ask. I suggested that she work on teaching them responsibility instead, maybe involve them in chores or teach them about saving. She reacted as if I had personally attacked her and her parenting. The last straw came when she called me during a family gathering and publicly announced that she was disappointed in how Uncle Me doesn't love his nieces and nephew enough to provide for them the way he should. Everyone was watching. I stayed calm and told her that I value them, but I also value teaching my children, and anyone I help financially, the importance of responsibility and prudence. I offered to help the kids with educational or extracurricular activities that are constructive, but I firmly refused to make a huge inheritance available to them in a way that rewards entitled behavior. After that, our parents' cousins got involved and started questioning my decisions too. Some of them argued that family is supposed to share, and by not giving the kids a big inheritance, I'm setting a bad example. I tried explaining my reasoning, emphasizing financial responsibility and long-term security, but they dismissed it, framing it as selfishness. My own children have noticed the tension, and while I try to shield them, they're aware that there's a family conflict. Laura has since cut off most contact with me. She occasionally sends messages accusing me of being cruel to her children and suggests that I'll regret it when I die. I've stayed firm because I honestly believe I'm doing the responsible thing. I want my kids to learn that money isn't unlimited and that it comes with responsibility. I also want Laura's kids to understand that not everything they want will be handed to them. I've offered other forms of support, educational guidance, saving for specific goals, or helping them learn about money, but she interprets all of it as me withholding affection. I've talked to a few close friends and colleagues about this, and the opinions are split. Some think I'm being reasonable and teaching important lessons about money and entitlement. Others think I'm too strict and that family obligations should outweigh my personal philosophies, especially since the kids are innocent in all of this. I've even considered whether I'm being unfairly harsh, but every time I think about giving in, I picture the cycle repeating. The kids learning that money gets you what you want, and my parents' inheritance being spent on things that don't benefit anyone in the long term. I honestly don't know if I'm wrong here. I feel like if I give in now, it will just create more conflict later and reward poor financial habits. But seeing my sister upset, along with other relatives criticizing me, makes me wonder if I'm being too rigid. I want to do right by everyone, but I also don't want to encourage entitlement or irresponsibility. So Reddit, AITA for refusing to make my sister's children a major part of my inheritance because I think they're being spoiled and want to teach them responsibility. AITA for confronting my sister about her parenting choices and causing a huge family fallout. 32F, have always been close with my younger sister, Lily, 28F. We grew up together, shared a room until I moved out for college, and generally had a pretty normal sibling relationship. She married her high school sweetheart, Tom, 30M, about 5 years ago, and they had their first child, a daughter named Emma, 2 years ago. I've always been supportive of them, even when their decisions didn't exactly align with mine. Over the past year, however, I've started noticing things about how Lily is raising Emma that make me uncomfortable. For context, Emma is now almost 3. Lily is very particular about her parenting style. She's extremely strict about screen time. Like, she refuses to let Emma watch even educational shows. I don't have a problem with limiting screen time, but it comes with a caveat. Lily refuses to let anyone else have input, even Tom. If he tries to suggest an app or show, she flat out refuses, saying he's too lenient. She's also very controlling about meals. Emma has a very picky palate, which is normal at her age, but Lily refuses to allow her to try new foods. She insists on preparing everything herself and won't let anyone else feed her, even when we visit. On top of that, she schedules every single minute of Emma's day. I'm talking nap times, snack times, play times. Everything is written in a schedule she updates weekly. At first, I didn't say anything. I figured everyone has their own parenting style. But during our last family gathering, things reached a tipping point. Emma was having a minor meltdown in the living room because she didn't want to eat the quinoa salad I had brought. Lily was insisting she eat it exactly as prepared. I gently suggested that maybe she could have a little of my pasta instead to avoid a total meltdown, just for this once. Lily snapped. She loudly told me that I was undermining her authority as a parent, that I didn't understand her vision for raising Emma, and that I should leave Emma alone. I tried to apologize, saying I didn't mean to interfere, but she kept going, accusing me of trying to turn Emma into a spoiled child by giving in to her every whim. At this point, Tom intervened, telling Lily to calm down and that I hadn't done anything wrong. But Lily ignored him, and the argument escalated until we left early. I tried talking to her later over the phone, calmly explaining that I was just trying to help and that I felt she was being unnecessarily rigid, but she hung up on me. Since then, the family dynamic has completely shifted. Our parents have sided with Lily, saying that she's just a protective mother and I should respect her choices. I feel like they're ignoring the fact that Emma is often stressed and anxious, and that the rigid environment might be contributing to it. For instance, Emma now cries when she sees a different plate or a different meal at anyone else's house. She refuses to play unless everything is done by the schedule, and she has trouble adjusting when plans change, even slightly. A few weeks ago, I reached out to Tom privately and asked if he felt uncomfortable with Lily's parenting style. He admitted that he did, but he said he avoids confrontation because Lily becomes unreasonable and hostile whenever someone questions her decisions. He also mentioned that he sometimes gives in to Emma's requests when Lily isn't looking, but he feels guilty and trapped in a system where he can't be honest. That conversation left me feeling even more conflicted because I want to support him too, but I also don't want to further damage my relationship with Lily. After that, I decided to have a more serious conversation with Lily, not about Emma's behavior, but about her approach to parenting. I tried to be as non-judgmental as possible. I said I respected that she had her methods, but I suggested that being a little more flexible might actually help Emma develop independence and confidence. I even shared some research about child development and how overly strict routines can create anxiety in children. I thought it would be helpful, but Lily completely lost it. She accused me of trying to control her, of being manipulative, and of turning everyone in the family against her. She texted me later saying she never wanted to see me again and that if I really loved Emma, I would stay out of her life. I feel awful because I didn't want to cause a family rift, but I also feel like I was doing the right thing by speaking up about something I genuinely think is harmful. Since this confrontation, our parents haven't talked to me much, and my attempts to reach out have been ignored. Tom has been the only one giving me any support, but he's clearly in a difficult position as well. I feel like I might have overstepped by addressing Lily's parenting style directly, but at the same time, I can't just sit back and watch Emma get stressed and limited in ways that seem unnecessary. I've been replaying the situation in my head endlessly, wondering if I was really the AH here. Should I have stayed silent, even though I felt Emma was being negatively affected? Or was I justified in speaking up despite the fallout? I want to maintain a relationship with my sister and my niece, but I also feel strongly about advocating for children's well-being. AITA for confronting my sister about her parenting choices and causing a huge family fallout. Thank you for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss new videos also. Leave a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Your support and engagement mean a lot to me. See you in the next video.